Anyways, with that said, if you want to turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 13, we're going to jump into week 3 of No Other Name. Before I do that, you guys saw the announcement. We're going to have a series called Heart for the House. We're starting in 2 weeks. I believe it's going to be the most important series that we've ever done. We have a lot of new families that are getting plugged in here, and we got to make sure that we're in attendance for that. It's going to be a good word about this coming up year and moving into 2019, as we believe that God is going to be imagining more. That's our year 2 thing. We're imagining more. We're already seeing God do incredible things, and so I believe that this is going to be a good series of direction, and it's going to encourage you as well. Amen? And I love this series that we've been doing, No Other Name. Week 1, we talked about knowing the real Jesus. We talked about the misconceptions that we have of Jesus, the genetic Jesus, the genie Jesus, the BFF Jesus. We talked about all these different concepts that we have in our head of Jesus. But if we would reach out and draw near to him and try to go to the Bible and figure out who was Jesus really. Because we can make these misconceptions in our head, what we've seen and what we observed. But when we go to the Bible, man, what does the Bible have to say about Jesus? And last week, we talked about serving others, and we live to serve others and do good to other people. That was Jesus. He came to not be served, but to what? Serve. That's the God that we serve. And so that's so cool. And so week 3, there's no way in 4 weeks that I could tell you all the characteristics and attributes of Jesus. So the sermon today is going to give you the necessary tools to really learn Jesus in the Bible, for you to see for yourself who and what he is. And so in Matthew chapter 13, we're jumping into this 3rd sermon in this series. I'm going to be skipping around, so you can. I'll tell you before where I'm at, but I'm not going to read the entire chapter. I'm just going to read some of the verses in there. But I'm going to start with verses 1 through 3. It says this. It says, later that same day, Jesus left the house and he sat beside the lake. A large crowd soon gathered around him, so he got into a boat. Jesus liked boats a lot. He always got boats. How many of you like going on the boat and in the lake? That's really fun. Then he sat there and he talked. Look at your neighbor and said, talk. Talk. As the people stood on the shore, he told many stories in the form of parables. I'm going to skip to verse 10. In verse 10 it says, his disciples came and asked him, why do you use parables when you talk to the people? He replied, you are permitted to understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but others are not. To those who to listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given. Well, we're going to be jumping on that today. They will have an abundance of knowledge, but for those who are not listening, even what little understanding they have will be taken away from them. And then on to verse 34. I'm going to finish at 36. It says, Jesus always used stories and illustrations like these when speaking to the crowds. In fact, he never spoke to them without using such parables. This fulfilled what God had spoken through the prophet. I will speak to you. This is from Psalm 78:2. It says, I will speak to you in parables. I'll explain things hidden since the creation of the world. Then leaving the crowds outside, Jesus went to the house. His disciple says, please explain to us the story that you just told us. Today, if you're taking notes, which I hope that you are, you can title this message, The Teacher's Way. It's already getting tough in here. Trying not to cough. The Teacher's Way. The Teacher's Way. How many of you, all right, before I kind of get started, if you're teaching now, like that's your career, or you've taught in the past, raise your hand. Anybody in here, like I'm a teacher, I've taught in the past. I know somebody else is a teacher, he's just not in here at the moment. Okay, why don't we do this right now? I want you to know that the work you do is very important. It's very important to our next generation, and we so honor you. So why don't we give it up for all of our teachers in the house? The work you do is so important. And how many of you remember growing up and having teachers? When you went to school and you had teachers and you're like, man, I remember the good teachers. I remember the bad teachers. I remember the teachers that didn't like me. Come on, some of you know that. I remember those teachers. How many of you know, though, you can always remember your first grade teacher's name? How many of you remember your first grade teacher's name? Come on, most of you do. If they say like first grade, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's we're finally getting memory as a kid. But I can remember my first grade teacher. She was actually my favorite teacher. Her name was Miss Doris, and she was so cool. And she actually kept up with me even till this day. And will check in on me from time to time. She's such a cool teacher that I remember her very, very well. And I remember a bunch of different. She has stories for days. If you ever get to her. And I can't let her tell you guys stories. Y'all might think different of me because I was not a good kid. I was a very bad kid. Which, speaking of that, how many of you remember going to the principal's office? Come on, if you've ever been to the principal's office, don't leave me hanging. I'm raising my hand. I've been there before. It was a place, and I needed to. I was a bad kid. You see, this is the deal, though. The deal is this. When your parents, yes, I'm blaming my parents, let you watch WWE wrestling as a 5-year-old, you get inspired to do WWE wrestling moves even when you're at school and you have other little kids to try them on, right? So I remember being in first grade and I'm like hanging out with my friends, and in wrestling they always use props to like hit people and stuff. So I had a belt, and that was not a good combination because next you know what, I was wrestling with some friends and I had ripped one of my belts off and I was hitting them and stuff, and I got called to the principal's office, and I knew the teacher told me she was writing me up, and we go sitting in the chair, and I'm already crying because I hated getting in trouble. I'm already bawling my eyes because I knew what was about to happen when I get to the principal's office, and I go to the principal's office. I'm like 6 years old, and I'm crying, sniffling in there. I wish I had a picture to show you what I looked like when I was a little kid. And I was a stud, man. And so I walk in there, I'm like sniffling and stuff. And he's like, "You know what you did wrong, come here." And he shows me the paddle, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is not going to be good." And he tells me to turn around, and I'm just like bracing for impact. And then he just literally just pat me like this. And like immediately, this is no lie, guys. Immediately, I stop crying. I turn around, look at him, and say, "My dad hits harder than you." He didn't hit me no more. He said, "I'm sure your dad's going to have some hits for you when you get home, too." And yes, I got my butt wore out. When I was such a bad kid, my dad had a belt named Mr. B, and me and Mr. B had meetings every day. So I can just tell you. But we remember those times and growing up with the teachers and the principals. And I believe teachers play a great role in today's world. And they play such a big role in the development of our future. And did you know that Jesus was a teacher? See, last week you learned that Jesus was a servant. This week I'm showing you that Jesus was a teacher. And he was a teacher. And in this passage that I just read, Jesus, he goes on to teach 7 consecutive parables. But the point of this message, I'm not going to be going into the parables at all. Actually, I want to show you the teacher's way. I want to show you the method in which Jesus used to teach people that I believe you can take home with you, and you can see for yourself how God can begin to speak to you. Because when it comes to really with Jesus and learning from him, it's just like he said in verse 12. He said, "To those who listen to my teaching." See, when you break down that word listen to its original meaning, it's not, like right now you're sitting down listening. But you know that you can be listening and not really be listening. So what Jesus is talking about right here, that word listen means to open your heart. So if I'm going to listen to the understanding of what God has to say, what Jesus has to say, I have to listen with an open heart. And when I listen with an open heart, then the information, I'm going to talk about this, but the information can then become revelation in your life. If I can listen with an open heart and not with a closed heart. And you see, when it came from learning from the Bible during this time, they had the Old Testament whenever they were around in Jesus' time. And in that time, they had rabbis. You ever seen a rabbi? You still see them sometimes walking down the street right around here, even in Keller. And struggling. And rabbis were very popular during Jesus' time. Matter of fact, the definition for a rabbi, if you don't know, is it's a great teacher. Basically, let me see, a teacher that was renowned as having great biblical knowledge. So these are rabbis. They knew a lot about what the Bible had to say. And then you have Pharisees. You ever heard of Pharisees? Many of you heard about the Pharisees in the Bible. Pharisees were legalistic. It was all about what you can work to be accepted by God. It was, I'm better than everybody else. That's how a lot of the Pharisees were. And a lot of rabbis were Pharisees. And I want to teach you something because Pharisees were also teachers. But Jesus was a teacher. And do you know Jesus, man, he was always controversial because he taught very untraditional and a completely different way than any of the Pharisees did. Matter of fact, I can show you a few different ways how that happened and how it was different. You see, Pharisees, they would take something that was very simple and make it very complicated. If you read some of their Pharisees' teachings. But Jesus, he would keep it simple. That's right. He would always keep it simple because the gospel is simple. It's simple to understand what Jesus is doing for you and how he loves you. And so he always wanted to keep those very true teachings as simple as he could. And the reason is the Pharisees, see, they wanted to show off their knowledge. They wanted to show how superior they were and how intelligent they were with their knowledge, but Jesus wanted people to get it. Jesus wanted people to understand what he was talking about. It kind of reminds me, I had a chemistry teacher in college, a chemistry professor, and she was like teaching knowledge in the class. It was going way over my head. And I was like, man, this stuff is hard. And I went to the book and I tried in the textbook, and I'm like, still can't get it. You ever had one of those moments like you're trying so hard, you feel like you still can't get it? So I do the only last resort that I can do. I go to have a one-on-one meeting with her. I'm like, hey, ma'am, I was so polite. I was like, I'm having a really tough issue understanding this concept, and I really need your help. And she looked at me and she said, well, have you read the textbook? I was like, yes, ma'am, I've read the textbook. She's like, well, then I can't help you. I'm like, what, really? She's like, I can't help you. I'm not going to explain it any better than that textbook. If you can't get it like that, then you're probably just not going to get it. Like, way to believe in me. Like, you know, it just felt in that moment, that superiority. Like, I have the knowledge, you don't. I'm not even going to try to help you get it. And I felt like that's how the Pharisees kind of were, because at the end of the day, Pharisees just love to talk to people. Pharisees, they love to talk to people. But guess what? Jesus loved the people he spoke to. That's right. He kept it simple. And Pharisees, they delivered lectures, but man, Jesus delivered himself. Pharisees, they were straight-A students, superior knowledge, and they had a lot of information, but what they lacked was revelation. Information without revelation is just information. And when you listen and you open your heart, like the word says, to the information that's given to you about Jesus, it'll turn into revelation in your life. It's simply what happens right here. You see, and let me tell you, you ever heard that phrase, some things are taught, other things are caught? We kind of catch that saying before. Like for athletes, I can tell them you can teach them all day what to do, but some things are going to be caught, and it's going to help them be a better athlete rather than taught everything. It's kind of that concept. And even at church, I want to make an agreement here. It's like I'm going to do my best to teach you what the Bible says. Every week I work hard on bringing a word to you that will help speak to your heart, but at the same time, you not only get taught some things, you got to catch some things. Like, for example, when you come in here and you come to worship, I pray that you catch the Spirit in this place. Yes. Because I believe that God is in here every week. When you come in here to worship and you start to lift your hands, you start to express worship to Him, and He can do something incredible in your life at that moment. He can bring revelation to you, even right here before the message even starts. God can do those things. Some things are taught, other things are called. And I can tell you, a lot of us, we know that Jesus definitely was sent here to save us. He was definitely sent down on earth to save us, but He was also sent here to teach us. He was also definitely sent here to teach us. And so I have a few thoughts for you that can help you about the teacher's way, about the way that Jesus kind of did this from Matthew chapter 13, that I believe you can implement into your life, and you can watch yourself become more like Jesus. And at the end of the day, that's what this series is about. This series is about knowing Jesus more so that you can become more like Him. And when you remember how I told you not too long ago, the way you think about Jesus directs everything else in your life. If you can get to a place where you know Jesus and you think about Him first above everything else, it will change everything else in your life. As simple as that. So a few thoughts for you coming from Matthew chapter 13. The teacher's way involved the classroom. The classroom. See, the classroom is where we learn together. It's where we get together in a group and we learn. We can actually see this distinction in Matthew chapter 13. Verses 1 and 2, it says, later that same day, Jesus left the house, and he sat beside the lake. A large crowd soon gathered around him, so he went into a boat, and he sat there and talked as the people stood on the shore. So I want you to imagine this. I want you to catch what's happening here. Jesus sees boat on lake. He gets in the boat. He kind of pushes himself off a little bit, and there's a ton of people gathered around listening to him teach. But after he gets done teaching, in that setting, guess what happens in verse 36? It says, look, then leaving, bring up verse 36 for me. I want to show them this. Then leaving the crowds outside, Jesus went into the house. His disciples were with him, and they wanted explanations of what he was teaching, okay? Now, there's this concept in the church world called rows versus circles. I want to show you that, for example. Like right now, what rows are. Rows are what you come here on Sundays. Because guess what? You're sitting in rows right now. You're sitting in rows and you're learning as a large group. You're learning you're listening and you're hearing. So in rows, you come together. It's like Sundays. You're sitting in rows. You're listening and you're hearing. But circles, something happens special in circles. You see, circles are when people get together as a small group and they come and understand and do life together. It's relationship. You can't do life alone. I'm going to tell you, if you try to live for the Lord by yourself, it's going to be a lonely ride. That's why it's so important that you get involved with people and relationship with people who are like-minded like you, who believe the way you believe and know Jesus. I'm not telling you not to hang out with people who don't know the Lord. No. If you're not hanging out with people who don't know the Lord, then you're not doing your mission. You need to be around those people so that you can be the light in their life. But at the same time, we need to have people that we can be like-minded, that can support you in your walk, that can help you in where you're at. And there's this concept of rows and circles, and that's why here in January, we're going to be starting life groups. Life groups, if you don't know what life groups are, it's a small group setting where we'll have probably 3 or 4 life groups for you to meet throughout the week. You'll go hang out at someone's house, a restaurant or something like this. You'll eat some food, you'll hang out, have some fellowship, and then we'll have like discussion questions to go deeper into the message that was preached that Sunday. Or it might be a curriculum-driven class or something like that. But these life groups are so important, man, because life groups is the circle. It's the circle that's happening. It's the relationship that you start building, and things happen, man, when you get plugged into a circle, when you get plugged into a life group. And me and my wife, we were in a life group at the church we were at before this. I want to tell you, you can firsthand experience some of the things that we notice when you go from the setting of rows to circles is where information that you hear on Sundays, they can become revelation in the circle. Because now you're going to understand it more, you're going to talk about it more, and people are going to relate how the message related to him, and it might relate to you the same way. So the information is now going to become revelation. Another one, this is where you're going to build friendships that will support you in this thing called life. You're going to build new friendships with people that are going to be great friends, that are going to be lifelong friends, and they're going to help you. There are people that were in our life group that we're still friends with today, even though they live hundreds of miles away. It's good relationship, and we still support each other, and we still cheer each other on. I'm telling you, something special happens in circles. It's where inner healing can take place because God uses other people to help speak into your life. You don't have to be a pastor to speak into someone's life. You might sit down at a life group one day and hear somebody going through something that you went through before, and you can encourage them. You can share your testimony with them. And guess what? To that person now, inner healing can take place in their own life. You get to pray together as a group. Man, there's nothing stronger than knowing what each other's struggles are going through and praying together and believing God to do something, and then coming back the next week and being like, such and such happened, and it's a praise report now. And then you celebrate as a group, as a relationship. Man, these things are so good for you. And I believe that you see, even where circles and life groups, this is where miracles happen. And simply put, miracles can happen. You think about the story with Jesus when he was teaching a large group, teaching thousands of people one day, and they were getting hungry, and all he had was 5 loaves and 2 fish. So what he did, he put them in groups. And once he put them in groups, then the miracle happened. And I'm telling you, something special about getting in groups. And I tell you this today because when we open up sign-ups in January for life groups, we want you to get plugged in. We want you to make it a priority. I know you're like, oh man, but you don't understand my life. It's so busy. I got kids. We're running this way. Look, there's 7 days in the week. I'm sure you can find one day that you can hang out with other people that can encourage you, that can support you, that can care for you, that can love you. And because at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you something. Our church is going to grow. Amen. We're only 2 years old, and we're starting to fill this up. I want you to see where we're going. Our church is going to grow. We're 2 years and some weeks old, and we're filling up the seats every week. I'm looking around the room right now, and it's basically a different set of people that were here last week. If everybody showed up on one Sunday, I think we'd be pretty scared. We don't know what we'd have to do. We're probably going to push that stuff back, and we're going to put some more chairs in here. But I think that's awesome what God doing. But I want you to follow me, okay? Because you've always heard of the people that won't go to the large church because they're too large and don't feel a part of things, right? So as a church, we have to make it a priority to be in small groups and to be in relationship. That way, when we become large, we're still a family too because we have small groups. And when people come in, if they would be intentional about getting plugged in, then they would realize that a large church can feel small. It can happen, that is, as long as you're making that willingness. But it takes our church to set that culture first, to be people who say, I'm going to get in a life group, I'm going to hang out with some people, and this is going to happen. It'll change your life. Put it this way, I believe God's going to blow it up, but God won't ignite until we unite. All right? I know that's a little catchy phrase, or probably kind of corny, but God won't ignite until we unite. And I think something special is going to happen. I think we're getting to a point where small groups are necessary. That's why we're doing them in January. And I think that's only because other things that can happen in the classroom relationship is some people, how many of you got some people that you know that won't step inside of a church? No matter how cool you tell them church on a mission is and how comfortable it can be, they're just not going to come hang out. But they might go to your house. They might go to a house and hang out, and once they get to meet some of the people that go to the church and they feel like, hey, I know these people, they're cool, they support me, then they'll show up at church. Even from small groups, we can grow even more relationships. Being in the classroom, man, don't just sit in a row. Embrace relationships. Embrace the circle. I know maybe you're looking at me like, man, Pastor, you don't understand. I've been hurt. I've been hurt by people, and it's hard for me to get too close to people because it's hard for me to trust and open up. But let me tell you something. I understand that people hurt. I've been hurt. The last 2 years as a pastor, it seems like people are just after us sometimes. I've been hurt, and I've felt the backstab, but also what I've noticed is people may hurt me, but there are also people that will heal me. So God can use me both. I thank God for it wasn't, obviously the call is what kept me going when me and my wife got so hurt in the past year with our church. But what happened was the people that were here, that were all in, loved on us so much that I'm like, I don't care about what people want to do to hurt me. These people are healing me. You don't know how much your love and your support and your encouragement helps heal our hearts. You think I do all the work for you guys sometimes on Sundays and come up? No, you encourage me just as much as I encourage you. I promise. When you just show up to church, you ain't got to say nothing. By you showing up every week just gets me excited. And man, that's so awesome that me and Leah, sometimes we sit down at night and we're like, wow, 70 people decided to wake up this morning and go to church on a mission. How awesome is that? And relationships are powerful. Embrace the circle. Let people open up. Let people begin to heal you. Don't just sit in a row. And in January, we're going to sign up and we're going to become a church with small groups. Amen? Yeah. The teacher's way. That's what I'm talking about to close this. That's what Jesus would always teach to a large crowd, which you can read over and over again. But after he was done teaching to the large crowd, he would get together with his small group of disciples and he would go into more revelation for them. It was a method that he used. The next thing is this. The teacher's way involved homework. Some of you better not tune out right now when I just said homework. How many of you never did homework when you went to school? Come on, be honest when you look. Yeah, y'all passed through high school. Yeah, didn't do your homework, and but it's so. I want you to see where I'm going to go with this, because you see, if classroom was relationships, homework is discipline. The disciplines of being a Christ follower. That's why he said in verse 12, I told you I was going to revisit this. It says, to those who listen to my teaching and more understanding will be given to them, and they will have an abundance of knowledge. If we read God's word, and we will see all through the Bible about these little disciplines that we can do to better ourselves, to make ourselves a better Christian in order to follow him even more and to do the things that he's called us to do. So we can continue walking in that. But when we listen, this is the thing, when we listen, we've got to put action behind it. There's a statistic out there that says 70% of people forget what the sermon was about by lunchtime. Did you know that? You get to lunch, parents, I'm going to tell you something. If you got kids in here, or you got kids that are in kids' church, the best thing that you can do for them to really get those seeds watered is when you go to lunch after church, you ask them, hey, what you learned today? What did God speak to you? Or if you have teenagers that are sitting here, hey, what did God speak to you during the message today? How do you? That starts to set something in them where they get to think about it, not just when they're sitting here, but when they're outside of these walls as well. I'm telling you what happens. It's small disciplines that you put in place. The word, when you become one with Jesus, when you say yes to Jesus and you receive that free gift of salvation, you become a disciple. We're all disciples at that point, and we're called to go and make other disciples and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We see that in Matthew 28. But this word disciple is the same word that we get discipline from. It's the same word that we get discipline from, and when being a disciple for Jesus, it comes with disciplining yourself. I'm going to show some of these disciplines. The word discipline actually means practices which enable you to do what you can't do on willpower alone. On willpower alone, you're not going to pass some of those tests. Some of you think, oh, I got it. But when you go to college, it gets a lot harder at that point. You try to take some high-course college classes without studying, and it's not going to go too good. It's kind of the same way. If you feel yourself always depressed, always anxious, never feel like you're gaining any ground in your walk with the Lord, then maybe there's no discipline in your life. Maybe there's no things that you're doing to discipline yourself, because the thing is, and I don't want you to think it like this. I don't want you to think about the fact that we have to work for salvation. You don't have to work for salvation. That's what I'm not coming from, okay? Because Jesus saves you no matter where you are. You can come as you are. Jesus will save you right there, in that moment. No matter how bad you screwed up, no matter what you've done, man, Jesus, he offers the free gift of grace. His grace is sufficient for your life. What I'm telling you is you don't work for salvation, but you work from salvation. I want you to catch that difference, from salvation. Meaning once I'm saved, now it's time. It says, the Bible says faith without works is dead. If faith without works is dead, that means I've got to only have faith, but I've got to discipline myself to do the things that God's called me to do, that he teaches me to do. I've got to discipline myself and do this homework, daily disciplines. You're like, what are you talking about, though, discipline? Well, if you just show up on Sundays and that's the only time you think about Jesus, then let's think about some discipline. What's your devotion life look like? Man, there are devotions out there that you can read. It takes 5 minutes to read one before you start your day. Even on your smart devices, they have this Bible app called the YouVersion Bible app that you can download. It will send you notifications to do your devotion in the morning. It's little things like that. What have you prayed during the week? For me, I have a 40-minute drive to work. So a lot of times that's my time where I get to pray to the Lord. But how can you prioritize your life where you can discipline yourself to pray? For the longest time, I would always get up here and preach to guys and tell you, hey, you need to pray with your spouse every night, and I wasn't doing it. So 5 or 6 months ago, I made a stand. I'm like, I'm going to start doing that. And I started grabbing my wife's hand and started praying with her every night, and it's a habit now for us because we did it over and over. After you do something 21 days or so, it'll become a habit. That discipline has now got to that point. But since we've been doing that, we've been praying together, we've been seeing God do more and more in our lives. That's right. It's so awesome. Yeah, we still went through some stuff because that's called life. You're still going to go through those things. But we've also seen God answer prayer in our life. We've seen God protect us when we need protection. It's something as simple as disciplining ourselves to do something like that. Or even disciplining yourself to do intentional acts of kindness or serving someone. Because, look, you got to be honest with yourself. Some of you in here, you're just not a people lover. Some of you in here are like, man, I'm just grumpy all the time. But if that's you, then you've got to get that hard heart out, and you've got to discipline yourself and be intentional about being kind to others and serving others so that you can be different and shine your light that Jesus gave you. It's as simple as that. It's that discipline that you have to do. I think about this, and I guess I'm kind of biased when I talk about this guy, but LeBron James is my favorite basketball player, and I think he's really cool. But what's so inspiring about him that many people don't know is he's in his 16th season as a basketball player, a professional basketball player at 35 years old. And for him to play at a high level that he is, 16 seasons in, and still playing at that level is inspiring. Last year, his 15th year, he played all 82 games and the playoffs at his age, and that's unheard of. And you see someone who's doing these things, but it's not that he doesn't just get out there and do it. And it's the stuff that he does off the court, the disciplines. He eats very healthy all year long. He's constantly in the gym working on his game. He's constantly in the other gym working on his muscles. You know, he's constantly disciplining himself, and that discipline has caused a longevity in his career. It's the same thing, and I think about with your daily walk with the Lord, that you will see yourself go further in life with Jesus and doing the things He's called you to do when you start the daily disciplines. And you discipline yourself with that homework. That's why the Hebrews writers tells us this in Hebrews 12:11. It says, "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant." Like when you're starting the gym for the first time and you wake up the next day and you're like, "I'm never doing this again. I'm hurting everywhere." And we started playing basketball again every other Friday. 2 weeks ago was my first time playing in like 6 months. And I just got to realize I'm getting older. And when I woke up the next day, I could barely move. I was hurting in places I didn't know I could even hurt now. You know? And so it's painful, man, when you're trying to discipline yourself rather than pleasant. But catch this. It says, "But later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." Amen. The peaceful fruit. You know, whenever you have time, if you're doing your homework, whenever you have times that come against you that are testing you, you're going to know what to do because you've been disciplining yourself. And even in the hard times, you're going to have peace because you've been disciplining yourself. It's simple as that. So we know that the teacher's way involves classroom, which is relationships. It involves homework, which is discipline. The third thing is this: the teacher's way involves tests. Man, how many of you remember taking tests in school? Boy, tests were not fun. Unless it was an easy teacher and they would give you the answers. You had those teachers that would do that. But man, tests weren't always fun. You remember taking those tests, but just like that, you see with Jesus, He will give you tests. But the tests that Jesus gives you, they're how we go to the next level. See, the test that Jesus gives you, that's the way in which God will use to promote us. So classrooms, relationship, homework, discipline, test is the promotion. It's the promotion, it's the point, because, you know, tests in our life, there are things in our life that come against you. I bet some of you, maybe more than half the room, can say, "I'm in a test right now." Maybe God's testing your patience. Maybe God's testing your stewardship. Maybe God's testing your humility. Maybe He's testing your bitterness. There could be all kind of things that God could be testing you in this very moment. And the thing about these tests is that God wants us to pass them because it gives us the necessary tools in order to go into the next season that He's calling us to. That's that promotion that you're going to see God do immeasurably more than you can ever imagine or think in your life. See, when I think about it, we don't like tests, but did you know that tests are good? Tests are good. Look at your neighbor and say, "Tests are good." Tests are good. James 1:2-4 says this: "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy." Are you kidding me? That's crazy. For you know that when your faith is what? Come on, when your faith is what? Tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Go to the next part. "So let it grow. But when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, eating up." Say, guess what? Your faith is going to get tested. And as you pass those tests, you're going to grow. You're going to promote. And as you continue to grow, you're going to continue to see God do more and more in your life. You've got to pass the test. You know, sometimes God will test you on things, and it'll do something special inside of you. You know, I remember one time I was first time in college, you know. In high school, I didn't have to study too much, and I graduated pretty high. I graduated with like a 3.92, and my parents were always on me about grades, so I made sure I did my homework. And but tests, I never really studied too much for. So when I got to college, I was like, I'm going to do this. This is going to be easy, freshman level classes. So I spent more time in the Pennington at Southeastern Louisiana University, which is their basketball court, than I did in the study halls. And so I was taking my first test, which was a math test, and I'm like, it's math. What you got to study for math? I'm gonna nail this thing. And I go in and I make like a 61% on it. And I bombed it. And when I was taking the test, I knew I was failing. And I felt so bad that I wasn't doing. I was like, oh my, I gotta kick my butt and get it in shape now because I can't go back to the Pennington and keep doing that. I gotta get my priorities straight so I can get to this test. But I want you to notice something. When I took that test, it revealed a weakness inside of me. It revealed a weakness of priorities. It revealed a weakness of discipline. I'm telling you, sometimes what God does is He tests you on things so it can reveal a weakness in your life. That's right. Something that you need to work on. Something that you need to get better so that He can help you in the next season of life. It's those little things like that. It's like if He's going to test you with bitterness, it's like how long will it take you to forgive that person that backstabbed you? You might be keeping yourself in a trap for years, and all you have to do is learn how to forgive someone so that you can learn how to get past bitterness, but that's ways that God will test you. Or humility. How will you treat people that are right in front of you? So maybe God puts you in a place where you've got to treat people all the time, and He's trying to make you more humble. Maybe He's testing you that way. Or what about this? Or maybe in your finances, or you're like, I'm always stressed with my bills, and I'm always stressed about my finances, but maybe God's just testing you on your stewardship. How well you steward things that are in your life. You see, a lot of times the test, maybe that's a question you can ask yourself if you're going through a test today. Maybe God's just trying to reveal a weakness inside of you. Something that you can work on. And let me tell you the good news about this. Great teachers will never test you on something that you didn't already know. Jesus was a great teacher. So anything He's testing you on right now, He's already given you the necessary tools to pass it. There was a time I got into, I'm using a lot of stories, but they make so much sense. But I remember going into college one day, and it was an English class, and I heard this teacher was hard, but she gave us a syllabus right at the beginning. If you don't know, the syllabus kind of tells you the schedule for the year. And she told us to go buy this book that would be tested, later on in the semester. But then she never talked about the book ever again. We were doing all the other stuff. And one day I get to class, and I pull out a sheet of, she says, pull out a sheet of paper, number it 1 through 20. And some of the students were like, what are we doing today? She's like, you didn't look at the syllabus? You got your test on that book today. And I just froze in fear because I totally forgot about it. I didn't read a lick of that book. Not one word in that book did I read. I was like, are you kidding me? She could have at least reminded us or something. And I'm sitting there like, oh man, I failed that test. I mean, you're going to fail some tests sometimes. But it was my fault. See, because I had the book that I could have studied in order to pass the test, but I didn't do it. I think some of you know where I'm going with this. Is that some of you were walking around the same mountain over and over and over again, and you keep wondering why this keeps happening in your life over and over again, like you can't catch no ground, and it keeps happening over and over again, and Jesus is trying to say, I've already given you the tools to win. If you would just stop for a second and gain the perspective that I've given you and the tools that I've given you, you've already got in your hand what you need to get to the next season to pass the test. Have what you need. Can I just tell someone in here today, you've got what you need to pass that test you're in right now? Maybe you just need to take a step back and see what God's trying to do in you so that you can find the answer. The good thing about Jesus, too, is that He's willing to retest you. At least you don't fail and flunk out. It just doesn't happen with Jesus. Everyone's accepted. He loves everyone. And He will retest you over and over and over and over again until you get it. That's right. Over and over again, He will test you until you get it. tests are a good thing. So if he uses the classroom for relationships, he uses homework for the discipline, and tests for the promotion, the teacher's way also involves graduation. You remember that moment you graduated from high school? Some of you made it by the last seat. You were like, I made it. I was sat on the last seat, and I was back there, but I made it. I got my diploma. I made it through. You remember that moment being special. Maybe you were the first person to graduate in your family, and it was a special moment for you. Or even college. I don't think I'll ever forget the moment I graduated from college and the moment that I graduated from high school. It was such a special moment that happens when you get to graduation. But what does graduation have to do with Jesus? You see, because when you do the classroom, when you do the homework, when you do the test, you start graduating, and graduation is all about us becoming more like Him. Becoming more like Jesus. You remember how people tell you that however your parents are, and a lot of times you're going to pick up on their personalities and you're going to be like them. And so the only thing I pray that doesn't happen to me is I don't become a bald man like my father. I like my hair, I want to keep it. But they say a lot of times you'll resemble those kind of things. You'll resemble your parents, or you'll do the same personalities. Like I used to wonder where Leah got her when she gets upset. She's from Kentucky. When she gets upset, she turns into a gangsta hillbilly. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. But I always wondered where she got it from. Like, oh, she was just trying to impress me or something. But then I heard her mama get upset one day. Like, that's where you get that from. So we resemble our family, and with Jesus, John 1:12 tells us this: but to all who did receive Him and who believed in His name, Jesus, He gave the right to become children of God. And guess what? If you're a child of God, there should be some family resemblance inside of you that show that you're a child of God. Graduation is all about us becoming more like Him. You know, I think about this, and I think about this message today. You know, it would take me weeks to come over here and tell you all the things about Jesus, how Jesus is the forgiver, how He's the Prince of Peace, how He's the King, how He's the Alpha and the Omega. It would take me weeks to go over with Jesus. So that's why I wanted today to give you this message that you can take back home with you, and you can start becoming more like Him. You can start laying to rest the misconceptions that you have of Jesus, and you can start figuring out who the real Jesus is and how He handled Himself. Next week I'm going to tell you why there has to be a Jesus in order for there to be salvation. I'm going to explain to you. A lot of people don't understand that question. I'm going to explain to you why. Why Jesus? Why God had to use Jesus in order for us to be saved. I'm going to answer that question next week. This week I want you to get, maybe today, what God needs you to do is get in the classroom. Start building relationships with like-minded people. Maybe that's the way He's trying to teach you things, because He's a teacher. Maybe there's disciplines that you need to make in your life so that you can become more like Him, and it can help you in your times of need. That there are tests, maybe there are tests that you're going through right now that God's trying to promote you in. Or maybe, just maybe, we don't just graduate. The cool thing about with Jesus, we don't just graduate once. Every time we pass a test, we graduate. And you should celebrate that. You should celebrate the next time you go through something that you didn't get angry and want to tear everybody apart that was around you. But when you take a deep breath and you got patience and you're like, I'm learning. I'm becoming more like Him. It's a graduation.